So Roseanne, tell me a little bit about your book.
So The Turn of the Tide, the new one, is it's a contemporary adventure story. It's set in Astoria, Oregon, and it's a story about two cousins who are spending the summer together. One of them is from Astoria; she lives there, and then the other one is her cousin from Japan. So he's Japanese American.
Is that where Goonies was set?
Yes, Goonies was set in Astoria. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of, because there's so many, Astoria is a really old town. It's, in fact, the oldest non-native settlement, permanent settlement in western Mississippi.
And is that where that fort is? Fort, is it? Yeah.
Well, the fort itself is just outside of town, but yes.
Real close, yeah. I think I've been there, yeah.
Yeah.
So your book is about
So it's set in Astoria, and these cousins, the cousin from Japan comes to spend the summer with his American cousins because there's been a tsunami in his town, and he doesn't have a place to stay, and his parents have to work, and so he comes to spend the summer with his cousin. And the two of them, they've both made a mistake that they're kind of ashamed of, and so they kind of have a chip on their shoulder, and they decide they're going to prove themselves by winning this sailboat race in a boat that their fathers won this race in together back
years
in the
ago.
day. And so that's their redemption. So
That's cool.
So it was a really fun, just a fun adventure story and a friendship story between these cousins, and so.
So I just want to hear about how you did your research for your book.
Well, there were a couple of things. One of the things that was from actually quite a little while ago is that this compass belonged to my grandfather, and I found it and I just loved it because it's more than 100 years old. And it still works. Like, I didn't have to do anything to it. Isn't it cool?
It's really cool.
I didn't have to download anything or plug it in or charge it up. It works exactly like it has worked for 100 years. And so it's just kind of a cool heirloom. And so I thought, oh, this is like a really cool like story object. And so I just carried it around with me for a while, and then it sort of fit beautifully into the story. So sometimes research is just a thing sort of like comes into your life and you go, oh.
So how did this fit into your story?
Well, this is the cousins. They have the same great grandfather, right? And there's a compass like this one that belonged to their great grandfather, and they both want it, and the dad gives it to one of them.
So there's
and
a
not the
jealousy.
other.
Or
So yeah,
something
there's
going
a
on.
like, but should be mine, and I deserve it more, and so it was kind of a fun touch point in the story. So sometimes there's something like this that
Sets
there's
it all off.
a thing in my life that I go, oh, this could be a thing in a story. But the other thing that really kicked this one off is that I heard Captain Deborah Dempsey speak at the Astoria, the Seaside Library years ago now, gosh. But she's an amazing woman. So she was in the 70s. She was the first woman to graduate from a U.S. Merchant Marine Academy.
Oh, wow.
I know. It was
I
amazing.
love that.
Yeah, she's super cool. And she, so when she started captaining ships, she was, of course, the first woman to captain each of these ships that she did. There's something called an unlimited master mariner's ticket. And there's about 1,000 people in the world who have one. Basically, it means you are qualified to captain any ship.
Wow.
In the entire world's commercial fleet. You can, no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter where it's from, if you have a master mariner's license, you're
And
qualified
she's
to
one
have
of
it.
them.
And she
One
is
of the
one of them.
1,000.
I know, and the first woman to be a master mariner, an unlimited master mariner, and she's the first woman to pilot the bar. So the other thing, so I heard her speak, and she had all these amazing sea stories, and I was like, oh, that is so cool. Like, she's just an amazing woman who broke into this profession that had been only men before, and is an astonishingly accomplished mariner. She is world famous in the maritime community.
And so she inspired you, and is she in your story, or?
She is, yeah, she is actually a character in the story. And she was very helpful in helping me vet a bunch of the details about the story too. And I have for a long time wanted to write a story about an ambitious girl, because I think the world is not all that kind to an ambitious girl, right?
No,
And
yeah.
I think I know lots of like 3rd, 4th, 5th graders who are like, I'm going to be the president. And they have these big ambitions, but by the time you hit 7th, 8th, 9th grade,
Yeah.
they're like, I might go to college. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something that happens to an ambitious girl, and I thought, oh, I would like to really work on a story that celebrates that. And so when I heard her speak, I'm like, oh, that's an awesome ambition for a girl. And a girl who lives here, whose dad was a bar pilot, would know this woman and go, I want to be her.
That's cool.
So
now, when you have like a talk with kids, I know you were saying something about doing this treasure hunt. How are you doing that? How does that link in?
Oh yeah, so the race that Jed and Kai, these cousins, Jed and Kai want to win it's a geocaching race. So a geocache is a treasure that's hidden at a particular GPS point, and so they have to go from one GPS point to the next.
So they have to use like a compass to search it out?
Well, you use a GPS thing, which is any phone has one.
Okay.
Right. And so they sail to that particular point. And so what I've done, and it's been super fun for bookstores, because just getting kids to come to a reading
it's not so easy. Yeah.
It's not so easy because a reading doesn't sound like fun to them, but a treasure hunt sounds like
That sounds fun
really
to
cool. So I'm going to do one in at a children's place April 9th in the afternoon. And so we're going to hide 3 different geocaches just around in the neighborhood. And each one has a little treasure, and they'll get the
Their
GPS
clue.
points for them at the beginning, at the bookstore. And then the first family to come back with all 3 treasures
Wins. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
it's fun.
That's cool.
It's really fun, and I just love it when a book promotion thing is more of a game, and the more it's about the kids' experience, and the more it's about the book, and the less it's about me, the better.
That's cool.
So
I'm curious, have you ever done any traveling to do research for your books, or do you read about it more, or do you go online or go to the library? What other things do you do to do research? I know you talked to this Mariner, but
So I do a mix of all of those things. So some things I've traveled for, like Astoria, is easy to visit. It's an hour away, so it's not hard at all. And so I went to all the places that are in the book.
Oh, that's cool.
And really looked and walked around and went,
did you sail?
Yes, not in the Columbia because I'm not a good enough sailor to do that safely. But I took a canoe out there just to get a feeling for what the tides and the currents were like, and that was terrifying enough. because like the current for the river pushes you westward out to sea, but then when the tide comes in, it pushes the water back up, and you also have rivers flowing in, so it's the currents in the Columbia are tricky.
Intense, yeah.
And they can change just like that, and so that's why there's a Coast Guard station
Right there.
I know. And that lifeboat is very busy because people get into trouble over the Columbia Bar all the time.
Yeah.
But it was really helpful to actually be in a canoe and go, wait a minute, I was drifting downstream a minute ago, and now I am drifting
The other way.
Like, how is that possible? So, like that sort of thing, that experience of going, oh my gosh, I thought I knew where I was going, and here's this force that I can't really see that's pushing me in another direction. That's a really great thing to experience firsthand if you can.
Yeah, and then write about it because you then have a feeling for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fun. It's not always possible for me to travel places like Kai's hometown in rural Japan. I can't afford to go to Japan. I just can't. And so in that case, if it's a place that I can't go, I was fortunate that there are 2 people in my critique group who have lived in Japan and traveled around in the area.
And so they told you all about it?
So they were very helpful. And then after I wrote the book, I talked to my daughter's Japanese teacher, who was born in the Sendai area, and whose brother lived there, and whose family was there when the Sendai earthquake happened 5 years ago.
Oh wow!
And so she was great about helping me understand sort of the cultural nuances, and to make sure that all the Japanese language words in the book were correct. But she also really helped me understand, like, what is the impact of surviving a tsunami, and what's the aftermath of that in somebody's life. Because a lot of the book is, Kai comes to America to spend a summer with his cousins, but
But he's just experienced this, yeah.
Yeah, and so like he desperately wants to prove himself in the sailing boat race, but not too surprisingly, he's afraid of the water. So it's like, which is great. I mean, from a story perspective, that's a great conflict to have.
Yeah, it is.
And so, but that was something that I talked through with her. I had a chance to chat with somebody, and I found an online site about Japanese ghost stories, because that's a big part of the culture,
yeah.
you know, and they're just great tellers of ghost stories. And so one of the things that was helpful about that is I knew that Kai was afraid of the water, but how does that fear
Play into the spiritual.
well, how does that fear feel in that culture? So like one of the things that I thought was so interesting is that in Western sort of mythology, the scary place is in the depths of the dark forest, and in the deepest part of the ocean is where, you know, the monsters are. But in Japanese storytelling, the haunted place is at the margins. So it's at the edge of the forest,
Oh, interesting.
or right in that mist where the water and the sky meet. That's the haunted place. So
Oh.
that was super interesting.
That is
because
super interesting.
I would have not.
I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, I would have just assumed. Well, of course, the monsters are in the deep of the forest, because where else would they be?
Yeah, that's fun.
So,
To find out, and then
right,
yeah,
and so then it makes it a more interesting story. And
very cool. So now, okay, tell us one more time. When is this treasure hunt for your book? It's going to be at the Children's Place.
it's going to be at a children's place. Excuse me.
April 9th, I think you said.
It's going to be April 9th, a children's place
And
at
what time?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you for coming. And
My pleasure.
yeah, it was fun.
Thank you.